friends. This is another episode of the program Empire of Lies, in which we discuss manipulation and disinformation in the Russian media. Russian propaganda turns weakness into strength. Vladimir Solovyov's evening shows are a factory of alternative reality, where every world event is given the correct interpretation, and every story serves a single purpose: to convince viewers that Russia is strong and Europe is weak, hypocritical, and doomed. In the episode from September 22nd, we see a typical example of this manipulative work. At first glance, it seems like ordinary analysis: comparisons of the costs of downed drones, commentary on the state of the economy, discussions of NATO. But upon closer inspection, these phrases conceal a carefully constructed narrative aimed against European unity and common sense. A cheap drone versus an expensive missile is a trap for the mind. One of the key arguments, repeated many times in the studio, is that Ukrainian troops, supported by the West, are shooting down cheap Russian drones with ultra-expensive F-16 missiles. The economy isn't doing so well, Solovyov concludes with a smirk. At first glance, it seems impressive. Indeed, the numbers are disproportionate. But this is pure demagoguery. European and Ukrainian air defense systems exist not for the sake of accounting, but for the sake of lives. The goal isn't to shoot down a German missile cheaply, but to prevent the missile from falling on a children's hospital or a power plant. But on air, the substitution works. The viewer is led to believe that the West is wasting money, which means it will tire sooner or later. If everything is bad here, why are we winning? Another manipulation is based on a paradox. The West says that Russia's economy is in ruins. But then why are we conducting exercises with 100,000 troops, increasing production by 30 times, and holding 20% of Ukrainian territory? This is a classic mirror technique. First, a caricatured image of a dying Russia is imposed, and then it is shattered by a picture of a parade or Putin's speech. The result is a feeling of pride in the viewer. See, we were buried and yet we're alive. But in reality, such parades are merely window dressing, meant to conceal the costs of war, the declining standard of living, the labor shortage, and dependence on China. From economics to morality, Satanists versus Russian goodness. A special part of the show is the transition from discussions of missiles and stakes to a world war of values. Accusations of Satanism, serving evil, and dehumanization are thrown around. The West is portrayed not just as an adversary, but literally as the embodiment of the devil. These are not random words. This rhetoric allows the Kremlin to justify any action. If the enemy is Satan, then any means are permissible against him. For domestic viewers, this creates the illusion of moral superiority. For Europe, it's a signal. Dialogue in the familiar categories of interests and compromises is impossible with such propaganda. It fundamentally operates within the logic of a crusade. As for nuclear weapons, let's pretend I know you have them, but you're pretending you don't. You don't have them, and then we Americans have nothing to fear. And what's going to happen in Europe? Well, that's your personal problem. Therefore, it seems to me that there may, of course, be some sincerity here. We have a whole sect of those with their eyes closed. There is a sincere element in what he says. And then there is completely obvious manipulation. And then there are us, members of the Nuclear Maniacs Club, Mikhail Mikhailovich. Let's tell everyone in this world that nuclear weapons exist, but let's leave them out of it. Let's, so to speak, do it this way. And you there in Ukraine can fight for 5 years, 10 years, 25 years, so to speak. That's your problem. The main thing is that it happens this way. Nuclear weapons, it's as if they exist, but it's as if they don't exist. The nuclear shadow as a blackmail tactic. A particularly disturbing section of the program is the discussion of the nuclear taboo. The studio participants reason as follows. The West pretends that nuclear weapons can be ignored. Russia, however, reminds us, They exist, and they must be taken into account. The subtext is clear. Moscow is once again playing the nuclear blackmail card, but doing so through a subtle undercurrent. What if you Europeans overestimate your strength? The goal of this discourse is to sow fear and disunity in the EU. Let some elites begin to doubt whether it's worth risking a third world war for Ukraine's sake. The main goal is cynicism instead of solidarity. All the broadcasts converge on one thing: to convince Europeans that supporting Ukraine is expensive, pointless, and even dangerous. Moscow isn't offering peace in the European sense. It's offering fatigue, disappointment, and disunity. And here's the most dangerous part. Russian propaganda plays not on pacifism, but on cynicism. Not let's stop the war for the sake of peace, but let's abandon Ukraine because it's too much trouble. This is a form of capitulation without a white flag. This was the program Empire of Lies. See you soon.